Hello, everyone. Welcome to Starfleet Tactical. It is, of course, Saturday night. I am Chris Weave. I'm here with Pat Doyle. How are you, Pat?
Good. How is everyone doing tonight? Hope everyone's well.
I'm doing pretty good. And I assume that, like always, our opinions are not the opinions of our employers. Has anything changed on that front with you?
No, they still have not asked my opinion of Starship Combat and Star Trek. So I keep waiting. But
so paradoxically, I mean, your opinion, your employer probably doesn't have an opinion of that. There is an outside possibility that my employer might actually have an opinion about that. So
yeah,
and that's all I'm going to say.
And when I wrote the that Federation Commander Starship Combat Tactics Manual, I actually had to turn it in to U.S. Fleet Forces for them to take a look at. So it's possible someone at Fleet Forces has an opinion.
The Navy is a lot more anal retentive about that than some other people are. They also aren't particularly good about following the rules about stuff. As they said to a mutual friend of ours on day 54 of the mandatory 30-day review, they gave an answer which was, we would prefer that you not publish this, which is literally an answer that is specified in the law, or at least in the regulation, that you cannot give.
Right. You can say, don't publish this. Right.
Yeah, they can say, here's what you need to do to make it publishable, but they have to give you specifics. They just can't say, yeah, we don't like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But oh well. Yes, I'm wearing my spam T-shirt again. In fact, it is indeed the same T-shirt as before. I only have one spam T-shirt. I also do. Hold that thought. But it is not the only spam clothing I have. And so, indeed, when these you may not be able to see it, but they're recessed so that when you walk in the sand, it leaves an imprint behind.
Oh yeah, that's right. I think you mentioned that last week. Yes.
So the Spam Museum in Austin, Minnesota is actually a very fine museum. I think it used to be better in its older location. It was a little bit bigger, but it's still a fine museum because on the one hand, it's like $1 billion a year product, but on the other hand, it's spam.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they do a very good job of taking it seriously, but not too seriously. So
right.
It's pretty
just seriously enough, right?
Just seriously enough. So, how was your week?
I think I had a pretty good week. I don't have any emotional scars or anything like that I can recall. So far so good. Managed to drive successfully and safely to work each day and come home. Yesterday I was in the simulator, got flipped upside down and was able to recover my airliner in less than 3,000 feet without pulling more than 2.38 Gs. So worked out okay. We all survived.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Were you, which chair were you in?
In the captain's chair.
Okay.
So we were training a first officer and they didn't have another student captain. So as an instructor, sometimes we get to sit with someone else who's doing their event, and either sometimes I play captain, sometimes I play first officer. So that's fun, actually. So I actually get to sit behind the controls every now and then too, which is good.
So yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So it was fun.
So,
and that's a particularly fun event where we flip them upside down and make them stall the airplane and all that kind of stuff. Like if you were to hit wake turbulence or wind shear, or, for some reason you happen to stall the airplane or something like that, or engine failures, that kind of stuff. So got to do a bunch of those sort of things. So it was fun. It's a fun lesson.
That's good. Well, I had a busy week. Next week is going to be a busy week, so I'm still not caught up in posting comments about past episodes, but and plus the YouTube downloader hasn't been working quite right. So, but I do intend to get caught up on that. This past week, I was helping teach a wargaming class, at the one of the facilities on base. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
They've taken over sort of teaching that class. And then the other thing that I've been doing is prepping for a conference I'm running next week, the Connections Online conference. So I spent today creating a long document that's going to have, I'm going to create the StreamYard sessions tomorrow morning. Got to be late enough in the day and I'm tired enough. It's like, you know what? This is one of those evolutions. Best to wait and do it in a good night's sleep. It's not like anybody's going to go, well, I would have gone to the conference if he would have posted it at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, but he waited until 8 a.m. on Sunday. So that's just right out.
Right.
So, but for a lot of these things, I'm posting literally 13 separate events and sort of doing it all at once. And sort of I put it all in a Word document. So I've got everything in one Word document for both posting into Discord, posting into StreamYard to set it all up. It's created thumbnails to put at the beginning of it, did the whole bit. So got that all set up. But that was a longish day setting that all up.
So. All right. Yeah. Sounds like a busy week.
Yeah, and then the conference itself is this coming week. So I'm the master of ceremony. So the Connections Online is the latest in a series of Connections conferences. The first one was started in 91 or 92 at Air University down at Maxwell Air Force Base by Matt Caffrey, the guy who was teaching the course I was with, the guy in the cubicle next to me, author of On Wargaming. He's like the dean of Air Force Wargaming. And Matt got asked to start this conference back in the 1991 timeframe. And for the first 8, 9, 10 years, it was at Air University down at Maxwell. Then it sort of went on the road for a while. At some point, other countries said, hey, we're going to have a wargaming conference just like Connections. And since it's just like Connections, can we call it Connections? And Matt said, sure, go ahead. And so the end result is last year when they went online, for reasons that I won't get into here, by the time everything shook out, I had said, well, you know what? I'm going to do an online conference of my own. And I'm going to call it Connections Online. So it's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, plus some extended events. In fact, technically it's already started. There was some stuff today, but that's the sort of the core hours. So anybody who's interested, just do a search for Connections Online. Throwing in Armchair Dragoons probably helps because they're hosting a lot of the stuff, and Brent Guillory from Armchair Dragoons and his people have been doing a yeoman's work helping me out with it. And Merle Robinson from the National Security Decision-Making game, if you've ever played that at Origins, has been doing fantastic work also. And I literally couldn't do it without them. Cool. But I would have tried. But I'll be glad when it's in my rearview mirror. I'll finish that at like 4 o'clock on Wednesday, and then at 10 a.m. on Thursday, I get Pfizer number 2, the Pfizering.
Oh, so yeah, Friday will be a recovery day.
Yeah. Friday, Thursday, and I'm taking leave all next week. I told them, you might get a couple of hours out of me Thursday and Friday, depending upon how that works out. I'll probably put in a couple of hours before I go to get my shot on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
But I did manage to find time in all of this to do a couple of things this week. I managed to find time to start that book that you recommended to me, which is Chain of Command by Frank Chadwick, formerly of Game Designers Workshop, if you guys know about that. They were a game company that started in 1970, ran from like 1973 to about 1993. They were around for about 20 years. they figured out that for 20 years they did a product on average every 2 weeks, every 10 days, something like that. I mean, they had a pretty good output, and they were literally my favorite game company. I did not sleep well the night I knew that they were going out of business. I literally didn't sleep that night. But Frank started writing novels in addition to doing game stuff, and so Chain of Command, I'm enjoying it a great deal. You finished it already, didn't you, Pat?
Yeah, I finished Chain of Command yesterday or the day before, so really enjoyed it.
And you started the next one, right?
I have started the second book. I don't know if there's a third yet, but I did start the second one.
The second one just came out fairly recently. I was kind of tracking that for a while, and it had lost lock that it actually had come out. Mm-hmm. There's 2 other books in the same series, but they're like noir type detective novels. They're not they're not Navy stuff.
Okay.
Noir.
Okay.
So, but I'm enjoying this one enough that I did go and buy those 2. So.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's definitely kind of very much U.S. Navy in space. So,
yeah, in some ways it kind of reminds me of, hold on a second. It'll come to me.
Above and Beyond.
John Lumpkin.
Oh.
John Lumpkin's John Lumpkin is one of the principals behind a game company these days. And I can't remember the name of the game that's coming out. Andy was talking about it about a month ago. It's the game where the aliens invade the solar system, and there's different factions within the solar system, and you're building your fleets and stuff, and negotiating what the response to the aliens is going to look like. But they did a big Kickstarter. It looks like it's doing pretty good. But John did 2 books, Through Struggle the Stars, and I can never remember what the second book is. I was a minor consultant on these, including a few places where he had characters getting all outraged, and I said, really, no, naval officers wouldn't get outraged about that stuff. Just half of, I said, it was, they discovered there had been some double dealing going on, and I said, look, a third of them would go like, I'm not real happy about this, but it doesn't affect my day-to-day job. A third of them would go, I don't care one way or the other. And a third of them would go, well, thank God it turns out the guys in charge are not idiots and they're willing to play hardball. And the number of people that actually sort of stormed out and threw down their commissions and, I'm out of here. The people who did that, there'd be like 5 of those guys in the entire Navy, as opposed to like all of them. So John did tone it down a bit when he published it. But one of the interesting things about that book is that in that book, the Space Force is relatively new. And as a result of that, of the Space Force being new, they've pulled people from the Air Force and the Navy, and there probably had to be at least one coastie in there because there's always one coastie around somewhere, and they're trying to sort of figure out what their corporate culture is. It's an interesting juxtaposition with what we're currently really seeing with Space Force. Because so far, to the best of my knowledge, the only people that have changed from one of the other services to Space Force have all been Air Force people. And so Air Force Space has its own, sort of outlook and stuff, in the same way that the Army Air Corps thought differently than the Army did. But in theory, they're all coming from a similar background. They haven't had the culture clash that they're going to run into when they start pulling in Navy guys. So you're muted again, Pat.
Yep. Yeah. That would be interesting. I mean, so one of the things is you kind of wonder. So when we do start having, the military has a physical presence in space a little bit more and stuff like that, spaceships, whatever, fighting in orbit between here and the moon, whatever it is, which culture ends up becoming dominant? Is it going to be Air Force stuff? Kind of like what we saw, was it Stargate? There you pretty much had Air Force was running space stuff, because Navy is people on boats, on water, on a planet. And that doesn't necessarily mean you translate into naval tradition once you get up into space. I mean, it's not a guaranteed thing, right? Seems like it would make sense to me. And that's a lot of what we've seen, but in various sci-fi shows.
I think for me, it seems to me that the big thing, the break point, right? The sort of conceptual break point for me is, do you live on your platform?
Right.
A lot of Air Force guys, I'm sure every now and then end up sleeping in their airplane or something like that, right? It used to happen in Vietnam. They end up at some airfield out in the boonies, and there's not a rack for them. And I remember reading one where I want to say the guy was an A7 pilot, and he was sleeping in the air intake until because he didn't have any place else to sleep, and it's like, oh, I could sleep on. Well, no, all right, I'll just climb in there, until a guard came by and said, "Hey, dude, don't do that." He didn't say dude. He said, "Sir, don't do that, because occasionally they do sneak in. And if they sneak in, one of the things they'll do is throw a grenade in the airplane, and that's where you throw it." You went, oh, okay.
Yeah, sleeping under a big gas can, an aluminum gas can, maybe not so great.
Well, yeah, and then you're in a tube, so it's not like, where do you go?
Yeah. I mean, I often say, if someone asks me what I do, I say I work in high-speed aluminum tubing.
I like that.
If I don't feel like explicitly saying I'm a pilot.
There's a couple of books I reread periodically, and when I do, I always read them back to back. And they're both books about space forces being created basically by being created secretly. Mm-hmm. And one of them is by Larry Bond and Chris Carlson, and it's called
Lash Up.
Have you read it?
Yeah, both of those. I've read both of those books on your recommendation.
Yeah, I know that we had talked about this, and I've probably even mentioned it on the show, but I couldn't remember whether you'd read them. So, Lash Up, and the other one is Thomas May's is A Sword into Darkness, and Tom is, I can't remember if he's actually pinned on 06 yet or not, but he's going to take command of one of those Navy support ships, one of the new ones, not the Chesty Puller class, but the one that's like that. Mm-hmm. It's not the one that has the area for the LCACs to come up and beach themselves like walruses. It's the one that's more of a flight deck. So it's a support ship. So he's about to take command of that, and I'm going to try to go out and visit him wherever he's stationed, just because I'd really like to see that ship. Mm-hmm. So. And then, of course, Larry Bond and Chris Carlson were both naval officers. So
right. Yeah, no, I enjoyed both of those books a lot. So they were good and instructive on that stuff.
So, is there anything else that you've done recently that you've enjoyed? Any other media that you've enjoyed?
So yeah,
was I subtle there?
Did you happen to get around to seeing the Axanar interlude?
I did. So I watched most of the launch party thing that Alec hosted. It was like the next day. I can't remember. I don't think it was the day it came out. I think it was the next day, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And saw interlude, watched most of that. At some point I got a phone call, and so I saw about 45 minutes of it, where they were talking with some of the actors, and they talked with Jonathan Lane, who wrote and produced it. They talked with the director and stuff like that. And so that was sort of interesting, seeing the behind the scenes stuff that happened with it. But I've watched it probably 4 times now. Mm-hmm. There's some very interesting things in there, and there's some other things where I sort of go, "Huh, that's an interesting choice." But by and large, I liked it. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. It's like, with the fan films when they're good, if you only get 10 to 15 minutes of something that maybe you'd like to see some more of. So but go ahead.
I was going to say the thing that I came away sort of scratching my head about is why are they're being shot at?
Yep.
Why are they at sublight speed? If they're trying to run away from these guys, I would have thought the first thing that you would do in trying to run away from these guys is to actually go to warp.
Yeah. Again, with only 12 minutes, we don't get all the background, right? I mean, every single line, don't get me wrong, I know nothing about making movies or anything like that.
Yeah.
As Captain Kirk or Admiral Kirk said, I'm not a drama critic. So I can't speak to, so I have no idea. However, at the beginning of it, they're around a planet, right? So it looks to me like you see as the Klingons are chasing them in one of the opening shots. Let me see here. You see that the Klingons are passing, there's a planet in the background as the Klingons are taking their opening shots at the ships. Now, we don't know how long they've been chasing each other, but so it looks to me like they've just been chased out of orbit. And who knows? Maybe in 2244, flying through warp isn't like dusting crops. And, maybe they got some calculations to do still.
Could be. The other thing that as I sat there and sort of went, okay, what's going on here? It makes me wonder if it wasn't a situation where their calculation was that they were actually better off at sublight than they were at warp, right?
Well, yeah, it could be, because one of the things they mentioned is your weapons at warp are photon torpedoes. Well, we know, at least I believe, the Ares has lost their aft torpedoes. So maybe that was they lost those in the opening volley. Maybe, I don't know. I know none of the background, or I don't know the script or the setup or any of that stuff. So anything here is just speculation. But yeah, it appears that they lost their some of their aft weapons early on in the battle, and who knows? Maybe they thought they could get some distance or something like that. Or maybe they, for whatever reason, maybe some of their navigational stuff was damaged, right at the beginning of the battle. Maybe they can't go to warp immediately. Who knows? But for whatever reason, they're being chased at sublight. But we do see that in Star Trek a lot, right? Where someone's being chased, even if you were outgunned, you would drop to sublight in a lot of cases, because you maybe flying in a straight line at high warp just means you die sooner without being able to maneuver.
Nog and Jake Sisko drop out of warp that one time. And Jake basically says, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. He said, look, at least at sublight, we're way more maneuverable.
Yeah. And maybe we can get away from them and stuff a little bit. So, so either way, they're running, and the Klingons are lobbing torpedoes and disruptors at them. And one of the things, and I really like this, because in the original series, before they remastered things, we only saw the engine-mounted disruptors getting fired by the Klingons. In Starfleet battles for the Klingon D7, with the deck plans and stuff, whatever passed for official deck plans at the time, there were numerous other small hull-mounted disruptors or phasers on the D7 also, but those were presumably shorter range. But in the remastered Star Trek, while we never saw a Klingon D7 fire photon torpedoes, we did see the Romulan version of the D7 fire off torpedoes at the Enterprise as it went into cloak and was running away with the cloaking device in the Enterprise incident. Now, we don't know if those are plasma torpedoes or photon torpedoes, but either way, it was a little red dot that was chasing after the Enterprise and stuff. So, and of course, in the series that is not to be named, Discovery Season 2 in the battle, we did see the Klingon D7s in that firing the engine-mounted disruptors and photon torpedoes as well. In that battle. So, So anyway, so yeah, that's fairly consistent, and that's pretty cool that we got to see all that stuff. I believe I don't think I have a perfect photon torpedo count, but I think the Klingon D7s were generally seemed to have a rate of fire, a lob off 3 at a time. I can't remember if I saw 4 being fired out of one of them one time, but so that seemed to be the rate of fire that they were using for it. So it was pretty neat. And then we've got the Ares and the Artemis running away, and my impression is that it's fairly long range. They're not, we always see in Star Trek ships in the same shot, but I've still always kind of looked at that as just for sort of cinematic reasons. That doesn't mean they're actually 2 miles away from each other. As an airline pilot, when I'm 2 miles away from another airplane, I'm paying very close attention to what that airplane is doing.
Yeah.
So it's not a trivial thing when you start getting that close to other people.
You pay reasonably close attention when you're 2 miles away in a surface ship too.
You pay even more so. So, because the airplane, I'm relatively assured that the airplane is going to go some version of in a straight line, or even if they do turn, at the speeds we're going, it's not that much of an arc. But you take a ship traveling at 20 or 30 knots and I suppose jam its rudder hard over or something like that, then it can become a really unpredictable thing.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I don't think most people truly appreciate about how difficult it is to maneuver ships around. Although maybe a few of us at least understand that in the Suez Canal it can be hard. But it's just because cars react quickly. Ships do not react quickly.
Right.
The analogy I always give about underway replenishment is, take 2 convertibles, drive them down a desert highway side by side, start passing luggage back and forth between them at like 60 miles an hour. And then add into this the idea that not only are you doing this, but anytime you make an adjustment to the wheel, it doesn't take effect for 2 seconds.
Yeah. Yep.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. I've been able. I do remember I've stood on the bridge wing of a ship while it was replenishing another ship and everything like that. And I got offered the con, and I'd been watching for a while, so I realized, okay, I'm telling the guy to go 1 degree to the right, and then 1 degree to the left, then maybe 1 more degree to the left, and then maybe 1 more degree to the right. And you're just watching the slack in the lines. And I am sure there is much more to that, much more to the thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you get close, you got the Venturi effect that can suck them in closer together, I believe.
Yeah.
But I just decided as a midshipman, like, this seems like one of those things that's relatively dull with the possibility for catastrophe.
Yeah, my first time at sea on a destroyer, I got asked if I wanted to take the helm by the officer of the deck, and then later the captain said, "Did they offer to let you drive?"
Mm-hmm.
And I gave them both the same answer. I said to the captain, "Sir, I don't think my license includes this class of vehicle." And it really was much more about me deciding that, I was there to be an analyst, right? I was there on the taxpayer's dime to be an analyst. I wasn't there to be a fanboy, but I was about that close from just totally and completely going native, right?
Well, you should have. I mean, yeah.
I have absolutely no problem with somebody else in the exact same situation saying, "Sure, I'll do that." I just knew that from my own personality type, the last thing in the world I wanted to do was to, it wasn't that I didn't want to drive the ship. I knew that, like, look, I have to maintain some level of objectivity here, and I will throw that out the window if I do that. But yeah, it was always a blast going to sea. I really liked that.
Mm-hmm.
I got to see a lot of unwraps. and I got to see one. One of my trips to see. I think I've told you this before, but I can't remember if I've told everybody else. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you. We did a trip. I went to sea one time on 2 different occasions. I went to sea with a captain who only recently had reported aboard. That first one, that one I talked about where the captain said, "Did they let you drive?" He had been on board for about a month. The next time this happened, it was a captain who had been on board for a week. He literally had never gotten underway with this crew before. He was brand spanking new to this.
Yep.
So that one was a cruiser. He had commanded a Spruance class destroyer before, but it was his first time commanding a cruiser. And we're doing the meeting. It's like, what do they call it? The 1400 meeting or whatever. There's a set time that they always call the meeting. And one of the things that it's always known as like the 1400 meeting. And whenever you go to a new ship, you say, "What time is the 1400 meeting?" And they'll say 1530 or something like that. It's weird. But that seemed to be the case, at least during the time period where I was going to see. That seemed to be the case with a bunch of different ships. And so they're getting ready we're talking about the plan of the day for the next day, and we're going to do an underway replenishment at like 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's low light conditions. It's considered night for purposes of doing this. And the next junior officer in the rotation to have the deck during this is the junior ensign. And so the captain looks at her and says, "Ensign, how many underway replenishments have you done?" And she says, 7, sir, 6, sir, something like that. How many of them have been at night? None, sir. This will be my first. He then turns to the navigator and says, "How many underway replenishments have you done, Nav?" And the answer is, "I lost track years ago, sir." "How many at night?" 30. "All right, Nav, you're gonna have the deck tomorrow." And then he turned back to the ensign and said, "Ensign, I want you to make sure that you understand something. This is not about you. This is about me. I've never done an underway replenishment on the bridge of a Ticonderoga class cruiser before, and it's really bad form for both of us to be learning our job at the same time. You'll get your chance."
Well, it's good he made that distinction for her, or it was a her, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I thought that was fantastic that, he made a point of not trying to tough it out, not trying to sort of go, "I'm the captain, I can handle everything." Now he was also a surface nuke. So the nuclear guys, they're I love nukes. I've worked with several nukes over the years. One of the reasons I really love nukes in my last job is that I had a job that had there was a set of regulations associated with it. They were very detail oriented, et cetera, et cetera. You really it was a complex machine, and you had to spend some time studying to get it right. And every nuke I ever worked with, within about 3 or 4 days, would say, "Is there like a book of regulations or something that I can read about what we're doing?" At which point I'd say, "I've been waiting for you to ask." And I'd grab the binder off the shelf and say, "Memorize this," or at least read this, right? And it was all the DoD directives, et cetera, about how you do the stuff that we did. But I thought it was pretty cool that he made a point of saying that it wasn't anything about her, that it was about him.
Yeah. I think that's good.
So that struck me as a good leadership moment.
Yeah, definitely.
That was also a fun ship, just watching him figure out how this crew worked. Like they had a policy of always having they had a life-size Doberman Pinscher statue, because the commissioning CO had raised like purebred Doberman Pinschers, and the nickname of this ship was the War Dogs. And so they had this life-size Doberman Pinscher statue that the junior ensign, was required to take to all wardroom events. So there's this little blonde girl, like 5'2", who's got to carry around this life-size Doberman statue everywhere. And so the captain, I was on the bridge with the captain because there wasn't anything else to do. So on small boys, when there wasn't anything else to do, I'd go up and just hang out on the bridge and just watch. the stuff I was there to do, we weren't in the process of doing. We were sort of in between events, so it was an opportunity to go up and hang out on the bridge and just enjoy the nice sunny day, and to watch the underway replenishment we were about to do. And so the George shows up on the bridge with the statue, and the captain just looks at her and raises one eye. And the statue sat in the captain's chair on the bridge wing. The captain stood for his own underway replenishment, but the statue of the dog was in the chair the entire time.
Huh. Well, it's interesting. As I understand it, if the crew that commissions and the captain that commissions a unit or a ship, that's the first one when they're standing it up, tends to have a lasting impression generally if everything goes well and stuff. But on the culture of that particular unit, they get to put their stamp on it a lot. So that sounds like a perfect example of one of those traditions that lasted from day one.
Yeah, there was a little brass plaque outside of combat that said "Beware of dogs."
Okay. Cool.
So,
that's good. I like it.
Yeah, that was a fun trip. That was a fun trip. The captain was a good guy. That was a pretty good crew. I've seen some good crews. I've seen some not as good crews. All fine, upstanding Americans. Some of them just more competent than others. But that trip was a lot of fun.
Cool.
That was a lot of fun. So that was the trip that I almost got to ride an oiler in. I was really, because the initial plan, at some point they got to get rid of the CNA guy and send him back ashore. And so the initial plan was they were going to helo me when we did our last unwrap, they were going to helo me over to the oiler, and I was going to ride the oiler in because they were going to stay out at sea for like another week after the exercise. But then there was a storm coming in, so they called Finex early and they sent everybody into port early because it wasn't like a hurricane or anything, but it was just, they said, we're just going to call it. And so I ended up riding in on the cruiser. I would have been happier if I had gotten a chance to go on the oiler, because I've seen plenty of oilers, but I've always been about 120 feet away.
Yeah, give or take 5 feet.
Yep, give or take 5 feet. I forget what the exact number is, but it's something like that. So
yeah. So how about you? Any impressions from the ship combat stuff?
I liked it. As I commented to you when we talked a couple of days ago, I was impressed by the tightness of that turn on the Ares.
Yep.
And that was sort of interesting. I, like you, a long time ago, concluded that the visuals on stuff like that in Star Trek, that I sort of process them as what I'm watching here is a 23rd century TV show. So it's a TV show that's sort of, it's done by people in the 23rd century. It's a contemporaneous TV show in the 23rd century. And as a result, it has some of the limitations of our TV shows in terms of like, of them like cutting corners on some of the story elements and smushing everything into the same frame, etc.
Yeah.
So that turn seemed to be a little bit tight, especially since they were moving relatively fast.
Well, so a couple things there. We have seen ships turn that tight also in Star Trek, specifically the pilot episode of DS9, where we see a Nebula and an Ambassador basically flip around in about a ship width also. So we've seen it in Star Trek.
Most of the times, though, so I don't remember that particular one, but like when you're talking about
Wolf 359, yeah.
Well, Wolf 359 was exactly the example I was going to bring up. In Wolf 359, you got this board cube, and you've got everybody sort of doing stuff around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a different situation than everybody's doing this, going, with their foot, with the pedal to the metal. And at some point, one of them just says, on second thought, I want to go in the other direction.
Oh, no. Okay.
And
So
effectively does a power slide.
Okay. So to set up that 180-degree turn they did. Now, if we go back to some of the Star Trek stuff, Starfleet battles, for instance, you had something called a high energy turn, right? Where you dump a whole bunch of warp power into maneuvering the ship at warp, and it lets you basically spin the ship around, or turn in a really tight turn radius. So that's one of the things that at least we've seen in Starfleet battles. So if we assumed that they were doing the 2240 equivalent or 2245 equivalent of a high energy turn, that might be it. Now, there's nothing in the Star Trek technical manual from Sternbach and Okuda that talks about that. But again, in DS9, we have actually seen them on screen do a tight turn like that. But here's one of the things they did. They were running, and presumably they were running at full impulse power as they're trying to get away from the Klingons, or as much as they could, or accelerating still. And they weren't, the Klingons were fast enough. But excuse me. But the captain slowed them down to 1/4 impulse before he made that turn. So that turn wasn't made at high speed, or at high speed, in their terms. It was done at 1/4 impulse power. And that was part of the deception. I think they mentioned it as part of the deception for why one of the ships seems to be falling out of formation. Or is slowing down when the Ares is headed straight ahead. Now, I will say that in the game that we designed, that actually works out perfectly, because and as we saw in the battle that Chandler and I did from last week, right before Chandler spun around and did that 180-degree turn on me, he had slowed down to 1/4 impulse power and then did the turn. And, so that's a sign that you should be suspicious that someone's about to turn around, at least in game terms. And again, this has nothing to do with Star Trek, has nothing to do with, what they were thinking and stuff, but for, retconning it into my game, or into the Starfleet Tactical game, the ship takes a lot of stress from doing a 180-degree emergency turn. And by slowing down, you at least, you're using your impulse power to turn the ship around, as opposed to accelerate or maintain high speed. And so the ship's able to turn around real quick. I would still like to think, that that turn was, perhaps we just didn't see the space, the relative movement, with the background space, you don't see that there was actually a little bit of a turn radius there. That's me putting my finger on the scale a little bit,
and the guys behind them might have been a little bit farther away also, because I suspect that it worked with in your game when Chandler did it, but I also suspect that your scale was that you guys were actually a lot farther apart than they were in that interlude shot.
And so in the war game, I have worked out the actual time speed distance for the speeds they claim to be traveling and the weapon ranges they claim to have. About 1 inch is 37,500 kilometers at least in the game terms. So, but cinematically speaking, they would have been a few ship lengths apart from each other. But in reality, you're tens of thousands of kilometers. It just doesn't make for as interesting of a show.
Yeah, and everything looks like you're looking at a grain of sand from a mile away.
Right. Exactly. So,
and you're doing called shots on like the left rivet. The third rivet from the left on the. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
exactly.
So Scott Voigt said something about speed breaks out, let them blow by, like in Top Gun or Battlestar Galactica, and actually that's one of the things which I wondered about in that, whether you could actually do that in the situation they were in. Could you slow down enough that rather than having to turn around, you just slow down and let them come to you.
Oh, you mean like in what was it, in Battlestar Galactica when they'd hit the reverse thrusters in the original and fly by? Well, I mean that's kind of the standard hit the brakes and they'll fly right by kind of maneuver that we saw in Top Gun. Is my understanding of aerial combat is that's a great way to die quick. So there's a difference there though. And again, not a fighter pilot.
Yeah, but dying quick actually wasn't. I mean, that was kind of the goal of this exercise, if you recall, right?
With the, I'm sorry, say that again.
With the Artemis. Because the words before that were "turn off antimatter containment."
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, obviously, they were planning to get as close to the Klingons and detonate themselves. So
yeah.
And so the other thing is I actually liked that. I think you and I talked about this a little bit. You got a cat trying to get up. All right.
Yeah. So let's appease the cat.
Is when they sort of suicided themselves. Well, not sort of. They suicided themselves into the formation of Klingons. I actually kind of like that they didn't necessarily take out the Klingons or anything. It appeared to damage them. The shields flared, and but when, at least the way we've modeled it in our game as well, a ship explosion, you got to be pretty close, and the damage isn't catastrophic. Your shields can most likely handle it. Now, if your shields are down and you're real close and it's a big ship, and you could certainly get hurt, but and you can still take damage through the shields, as we saw with the Ares and the Artemis. Even though they clearly still had their shields up, they'd had system damage. Their transporters were down, other systems, and I liked it. I really liked it, in that damage control thing, he's sort of reading off the systems that are knocked out. And the bridge looked really nice. I mean, it looked like they put a lot of thought into each of those consoles. And I'm sure if we zoomed in on them, they'd probably be.
It does look really nice. Having sat in that chair, it looks really nice.
Yeah.
So, it's a cool set. And when I saw it, a bunch of those displays were still just backlit plastic overlay panels. I believe it's now at the case where all of those displays are computer-driven displays.
Oh, nice.
So
I'm sure that takes a lot of electricity with all those panels.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm sure there was an awful lot of wiring there, because of course you get to see it on all sides.
Yeah.
There's wiring everywhere.
Did they build in explosives into the panels for realism?
What they do, no, but they do have somebody on the other side who just throws handfuls of gravel over the top.
Okay.
If they need rocks all over the place.
If they need rocks to come out of the ceilings.
Yeah, that's actually one thing I've noticed in the fan films. You don't have all these explosions and things falling down, et cetera, et cetera. It's almost like they don't want to destroy their own set.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
but I'm looking forward to COVID being over and going down there and actually doing a show from the set.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. That'd definitely be pretty cool.
We should do that. Back to the Klingons not being totally destroyed. The Klingons took, it seemed to me that they took about as good a hit as they could without being destroyed.
Yeah.
I mean, all three ships appeared to have lost their shields and power and were drifting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that tells me that if that explosion had been just like a relatively smaller, relatively small increase, like say a factor of 2,
mm-hmm.
They might have actually done serious, obvious physical damage, maybe even total destruction of all those ships. As it was, the fact that they were able to totally knock the shields down with one shot is pretty impressive.
Yeah. We saw them flare. We don't know, we don't know exactly how badly damaged the Klingons were, but clearly they took some damage and shields were flared and stuff, but it was clearly at least enough to
let all the lights went out.
Or the Ares get away. Yeah, that's true. The lights did go out.
And including the torpedo tube. Tube went on. And I want to say the shields flickered in a way. I mean, it seemed to me that what we saw was the shields actually going down.
Yeah, that could be, sure. So,
and if you listen really carefully, you can hear Klingon cursing.
Yep. It's possible even a Klingon Commodore lost his head for not successfully capturing or killing the admiral.
Yeah. So that's definitely an interesting setup, though, for the next Axanar movie.
Yeah. So it seems to me maybe we can get a little bit more. Hopefully, we get a little more mileage out of pieces of the story. Again, I don't know all the legals, the legal requirements or stipulations and stuff about how many films they can make. But I suppose if different groups and different companies do some of the movies, we can get a few more episodes out of the deal. So.
Well, and they made a point of saying in the launch party thing that that when this idea was first proposed, Alex's response was, "I can't produce. I'm limited to 2. I can't. Yeah. It's not going to be me." So.
Yep. I really enjoyed the battle, and it was actually a really well done.
Did we learn anything we didn't know previously? Capability wise, tactics wise?
I don't think so. So, assuming the Klingons were shooting at long range, relatively long range, the evasive maneuvering was working. So we saw plenty of weapons miss, but plenty of them hit, right? I mean, if you're doing nothing but running away from your opponent and they've got all the time in the world to just keep shooting at you, even if they're not accurate, eventually they're going to hit with something. So you gotta do something to change that. So, and that's what they did. Tactically, they had, if just running at sublight for a really long time, they were going to get worn down by, 3 more, the D7's much more powerful. So they would have just gotten worn down and killed. So that wasn't going to work. If they had both just gone to warp, then they would have been getting photon torpedoes lobbed at them, because I'd assumed that the D7 was even faster, a little bit faster at warp than the Ares class. So they still would have died. So losing one of them was, I can't think of any other particular thing that they could have done to get away, but other than what they did. So I guess I haven't tried to come up with a third Koa yet, but Koa 1 and 2, you die, and they picked Koa 3. There might be a 4 in there somewhere. I'm not sure what it was, but like I said, they made a point to saying the aft torpedoes were down, so they weren't going to really be shooting back. So it's not like a lucky hit was going to take out a Klingon. And even if they took out one of them, it still leaves 2 more that are still more powerful. So it's a bad situation to be in when you're outgunned and you can't outrun your opponent.
Yeah. But all right, I guess Buddy is done. He's going off to his little cubby hole. But
he's had enough for the night, huh?
Well, he'll probably come out of the cubby hole after we finish and I go and lay down on the couch and watch YouTube videos for a little while. He'll probably come out of his little cubby hole again. So what I did is at some point I was going to get a box for him, because he's a cat. He likes boxes, right? And I realized that I didn't have to get him a mobile home like that. I could get him a permanent home because I wasn't using the bottom shelf of the entertainment unit. And one of the shelves there was sort of partially covered up by the foot of my couch, because my couch is right up against it. I've got this L-shaped couch and it's right up against it. And so I put a a towel in there and a little kitty heating pad, and he's got his own little cave to go hang out in. And
Cool.
so that's where he goes and hangs out when he's not on the heating pad. That's literally like right there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're about done.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Looks like we're about 9:56. So that's pretty good. Hey, for everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe, pass it on to other people so we keep growing the channel. Absolutely keep doing that. And thanks for your support and your weekly, it's nice to see everybody see the same names every week. It's really kind of cool. So thanks to everybody for showing up and watching us.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. And if you want to come to, I didn't tell you for this Connections Online conference, it's like $5 to register, and that's just because we brought in some extra help and we were paying for some IT resources. The $5 gets you the ability to log into the Discord server and actually ask questions and participate with other people. You do not have to be a professional wargame designer or anything like that. It's a professional wargaming conference, and that means it's for people who take wargames seriously. It doesn't mean that you have to be somebody who gets paid to do wargaming stuff. So, or if you don't want to pay, just do a search. Find us on the Armchair Dragoons channel. Just watch it on YouTube for free. We're going to pump it to YouTube just like we do this show. It's going to go straight to YouTube. If I can figure out how to turn comments off, we're going to have comments off though, just because we want people to come in through the Discord server. So,
one other thing for everybody. A few people had asked about the game that we kind of modeled last week, and so while I'm going to be out of town this next week, so this week and next weekend don't look good, but at some point. I would like to set up, or for anybody who's interested, if you have Tabletop Simulator, I've got a module for it, and I'd be happy to show that game to some other people because I got several comments from different people who expressed some interest. So if that interest holds, let me know, and perhaps next week I'll take some names and email addresses, and pass out an email address, and then we can probably arrange a day to do that. I can teach people the game if they're interested. So that's about all I got.
All right. Sounds good, everybody. So we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right.
Have a good week.
Take care. Bye, everybody. Thanks again.